Hello, everyone. I am so excited I'm eating my hair, to come live to you guys right now. I have been getting a ton of questions over really the last several months. However, more so recently, I'm not sure if it's because more people are home, so they're feeling more readily able to ask questions to me, but I love answering questions. It is my favorite thing about working with people who have MS because I love brainstorming and figuring out the best way to help each person. Hey guys, thanks for joining. And I find that generally that during my initial evaluation with clients, which is that very first time that you go see a physical therapist, I spend time testing muscle strength, balance, range of motion, a whole bunch of things, but most of it is education on things that you can do right now to improve your strength, your balance, your walking, your heat intolerance, everything everything that's related to multiple sclerosis. There's so much education that is necessary to understand what to do. So I am really excited to answer these questions. I have my laptop right here because I typed out the questions, and I'm going to start with these ones. If you have questions along the way, feel free to type them in the chat, and before I end it, once I finish answering these questions, I'll scroll through my the chat message here and see who is typing things. Okay, so let's get started, shall we? First question: Are there physical therapists that specialize in multiple sclerosis? My best answer, quick answer, absolutely. So it's called the Multiple Sclerosis Certified Specialist, MSCS. That is through the Consortium of MS Centers, and a lot of different people can become MS specialists. It can be neurologists, nurses, but physical therapists are definitely someone who can become an MS specialist. What it requires is having it's recommended a year experience working with people who have MS before you even sit for the exam. And then you have to study for this exam and then take the exam. If I'm remembering correctly, I took it 5 years ago, so I have my recertification this year, but I believe it's about a 5-hour exam. It covers everything from all of the different symptoms of MS, not only the DMTs, but also the symptom management medications and steroids, all of that, as well as the types of MS, different therapies for MS. It's the same exam that neurologists take. Nurses have a different one, but to my knowledge, physical therapists and neurologists have the same exam to take for becoming an MS specialist. And if you can find one, it is, I don't know if I got this question, but MS physical therapy is so different from regular orthopedic physical therapy. And I know this firsthand because I wasn't always an MS specialized physical therapist. So I have learned what the biggest differences are, and my clients with MS see such a better difference with the MS specific exercises and strategies versus just the orthopedic ones that I used to give before being a specialist. So yes, there are physical therapists that specialize in MS. There are some websites that actually show you where they exist. Unfortunately, there are not a ton. To my knowledge, I was in the Boston area. In all of Massachusetts, I was only aware of 4. I think there's 5 now of MS specialists in the entire state. So unfortunately, it's not well known, but it does exist. The second question is, sometimes I wake up feeling very tight. What can I do to help that? And this kind of ties in with our third question. But sometimes I wake up feeling very tight. What can I do to help that? So there's a couple of things. Number 1, stretching before you go to bed. Our next question talks about stretching, so I'll get into that in a little bit. But stretching before, figuring out what muscles are tight. Is it your hamstrings? Is it your quads? Is it your calves? What muscles are tight? And doing stretches for those before bed. Another thing, sometimes I have some clients who get really tight at night, but it's because they're overheating from being under a bunch of warm blankets. So if you're overheating and your core temperature is rising, even just by 1/2 degree, that can sometimes cause tightness too. Or if you're cold, that can also cause some tightness as well. So the trick to that is, if you feel like there's a possibility that your core temperature has been rising because you're nice and warm and cuddly, then cool it down, sip some ice water. If it's the opposite, you're chilled, drink some hot water so that it can make your core temperature rise, and hopefully that can also reduce some of that tightness, specifically at night. There are some ankle splints, if you want to call it, that you can wear. I know some people's calves get really tight at night, so they'll wear these splints that keep their toes up to prevent their calves from getting tight. So that's another option as well. So our third question, which kind of ties into that, is what can you do to lessen spasticity when stretching gives me long, painful episodes? This is a great question. So just to clarify first, spasticity is different than tightness. Tightness, everyone gets. It's your muscles cramping and getting tight, and over time it releases. Spasticity has a range of 1 to 4. 4 is actually changed. It's not called spasticity anymore. It's called rigidity, and you are rigid in that position. There is nothing you can do. If my bicep right here is rigid and it's tight, even the strongest person in the world could come up to me and try to straighten it, and it would not straighten. That's rigidity. That's the most spasticity that you can have. And then range 1 means it's tight, but it does release. So there is that whole range, but stretching can still be helpful. I very rarely, in my experience, have I seen only spasticity. It's almost always, in my experience, accompanied with muscle tightness, and that muscle tightness we can use stretching for. So there's 2 different ways to stretch, and I'm curious to whoever asked this question. So you said that stretching gives you long, painful episodes. I'm curious which type of stretching you're doing. There's 2 different types of stretching. The first type is static stretching. This is the type that we almost always think of, where you hold a stretch for 20 to 30 seconds and then release, and maybe you do it again, maybe 2 or 3 times. That is static stretching, which is great for stretching. For some people, that's their best way that they loosen their muscles. There's a second type of stretching called dynamic stretching, and this would mean you do the same position. So let's just say your hamstrings are tight. You're in the same position, but instead of holding it for 30 seconds, you only hold it for maybe 3 or 4 seconds and then back off, and then go into it again. Hold 3 to 4 seconds and then back off. And you do this about 30 or 40 times. So it's a shorter hold, but more repetitions, whereas static stretching is a longer hold, fewer repetitions. Research does not show that one is better than the other. Unfortunately, as awful of a statement as this is, everyone is different. So for some people, the static stretching is best. For other people, dynamic. The best way you can tell is try both. And there is research now showing that more prolonged stretching is even better. So you wouldn't want to hang out in a position in a stretch that is a maximal stretch that's uncomfortable, but maybe halfway, and hold that for like 10 minutes, sometimes even 20 minutes. Just kind of stay relaxed in that position. There is research now showing that that type of stretching can also be really beneficial for people with tightness and spasticity from MS. So those are 3 different types of stretching. And for this person who asked that question, that stretching causes painful episodes, I would suggest trying one of those others if you haven't already. Okay, next question. I've lost muscle mass. What are safe exercises I can do to rebuild? I love this question. Physical therapists work on strengthening all the time, and there's a lot of different exercises. I could probably spend a full 24 hours talking about all of the different exercises that you can do to rebuild that muscle mass. There's so many different options, too many to go over in this chat. But what I do want to say is the best thing that you can do is get into a weight-bearing position, in my opinion. So weight-bearing means standing. So don't get me wrong, there's lots of great exercises that you can do sitting down, even just with your arms. Bicep curls, tricep push-ups, as I like to call them, squats, sit to stands, lunges. Those are all exercises that don't require much effort. Always hold on to something for safety, especially if you're in the standing position, because you don't want to tip over, fall over, and then you have an injured hip and then you can't exercise at all. So be safe, be overly safe. It's just going to help you in the long run. But standing not only can help improve muscle mass, but it also improves your bone density. So for anyone with osteoporosis, osteopenia, standing is a weight-bearing position, so you have a lot of weight through your legs, through those bones and those muscles. So standing alone is a great exercise. But to start building muscle mass, find the muscle that is weak that you're trying to strengthen. Again, maybe it's your hip flexors to try to lift up, or knee flexors for bending your knee. Ooh, my jacket fell. And make it as easy as possible for yourself. Lie down as you're doing the exercises, or sit down. But as soon as you can, go ahead and stand up and try to do the exercise in a standing position, just so you get that weight bearing as well. What are safe exercises? So I hope that helps. I know that's a really broad, generic answer, but it's different for everyone. Everyone has different physical abilities, but try to stand doing exercises if you can. Hold on for safety. If that's too challenging, start with lying down exercises or seated exercises. Okay, the next two questions also relate to one another. One person asked, what is HIIT, H-I-I-T? And then the second question from a different person was, how did you figure out HIIT is good for MS? I'd be scared of a flare. So HIIT, H-I-I-T, stands for high intensity interval training. And for the second question, how did you figure out HIIT is good for MS? There's a lot of research out now that I personally learned about at the annual MS Consortium last May, so almost a year ago. Tons of research showing how beneficial HIIT can be for people with MS. So high intensity interval training means that you, for a specific duration of time, I'll use the example of 3 minutes. For 3 minutes, you do an exercise that is low intensity. That's going to be different for everyone. Maybe for some people it's jumping jacks, jogging in place. Maybe for other people it's bicep curls. So that's for 3 minutes. And then immediately after that, you do maybe 1 minute of high intensity interval training. And high intensity for some people might be sprinting, or maybe it's push-ups, or quick squats, quick standing up, sitting up. It's different for everyone. And then right after you're done with that minute, low intensity for 3 minutes, high intensity for 1 minute. And you do that for maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. Everyone is different, but high intensity interval training is switching back and forth between high intensity, heart is racing, muscles are pumping, and then low intensity, you're still moving, but you bring everything down. You catch your breath, your heart rate slows down, and then you build it right back up and you're high intense again. And this is doable for anyone, whether you're still running marathons or just generally lead an active lifestyle, or if you sit most of the day, whether that be at work or in a wheelchair, whatever it might be. There is always something that you can do that's high intensity. It might not seem like it at first, but again, talk to your physical therapist or someone that you're working with to help you figure out what that could be for you. There's something else I was going to mention about that. The second part of the question is, so how did you figure that out? And then secondly, I'd be scared of a flare. I love that this person said that. I can't remember who it was, but I love that because what a lot of people don't realize, specifically people who have multiple sclerosis and heat intolerance, is that the reason you have heat intolerance, which is when one or several of your symptoms worsen because your core temperature is rising. So for some people, that's sitting outside in the hot sun is enough to have heat intolerance. For other people, it's hot showers. For some people, it's exercise. And that is so important to know, because if you get heat intolerance, you might be exercising thinking I'm doing something great for myself, but your vision is going blurry, or your muscles, your legs feel like they're going to go out, buckle from underneath you, or your sensations going crazy in your arms or your legs. So those are symptoms that your core temperature is rising too much. So what you can do to hopefully prevent a flare is, first and foremost, start off slow. You don't want to start off with your high intensity being super high intense, but also keep yourself cool. Sip ice water the whole time, wear a cooling vest, a cooling wrap, something to keep your core temperature down the whole time. I feel like there was something else I wanted to mention before we moved on to the next one. High intensity interval training, there's no specific guidelines yet as to how many minutes you should be doing the high intensity versus low intensity, but the the less intense the high intensity is, the longer you should do it for. So, extreme exaggeration, if your high intensity is sprinting your butt off, you maybe only need to do that for a minute. But if your high intensity is quick push-ups, you might need to do it for 2 or 3 minutes to get your heart rate up a little bit higher. Okay, moving on to the next one. We have 2 more of these, and then I'll scroll through the comments to see if anyone has any other questions. Next one, why is it that some of my episodes last a few minutes while others last up to 3 to 5 minutes? And again, unfortunately, this is different for everyone. Sometimes there are flares that just last briefly and then others last longer. My first instinct is always to ask you, is there a possibility that your core temperature is rising or that you're stressed? Those are the 2 easiest, in my opinion, reasons for flares that are easily fixed. If it's your core temperature being too low, drink some hot water. If it's your core temperature being too high and you're overheating, drink some ice water or get into a cold shower. If it is stress, calm yourself down. And that's a little bit trickier. It's different for everyone, whether you focus on breathing, talk to someone about something, but if it's stress, calm your symptoms down. Sometimes, though, there is no rhyme or reason as to why one flare lasts 30 seconds while another one might last 5 minutes while another one lasts 24 hours. So I know that's not the best answer, but sometimes there is no reason, and other times it's calmer quicker because you got to the source quicker if you know what the reason is that caused the flare. Last question over here on my laptop, then I'll go to the comments. I have MS and often experience pain and weakness in my limbs, but the appearance of these symptoms is somewhat irregular, which I'm interpreting as sometimes the pain and weakness is fine. Would I benefit from physical therapy? So I'm going to stop there. There's another part to this question, but I'll stop there first. So this person has pain and weakness in her limbs, but the appearance is irregular. Would I benefit from physical therapy? Absolutely. I mean, I think everyone with MS should at least go for one physical therapy session, because what you should be doing, I shouldn't say will because I don't know the PTs you'll be working with, but what you should be doing in that time frame is getting measurements of what is your current strength, what is your current range of motion, what is your balance like, what is your pain levels, what are your functional outcome measures, meaning what's your 6-minute walk test, what's your 2-minute walk test, what's your timed up and go test, what are all of these tests, the 9-hole peg test. And they can serve as a baseline, especially if you're feeling fine. Those can be a baseline. So if in the future you think you might be having a relapse, you can go back and now compare those current numbers to those old ones that you took however long ago that was. So it is beneficial even if your symptoms are irregular. And I'm going to read the second part of the question. How often would physical therapy help? And what would I even ask for from the physical therapist? Or is PT mainly used for those with more severe related mobility issues? I love this question because what would I even ask from my physical therapist? So physical therapy, I'm trying to pick which part of the question I want to answer first. It is not only for people with more severe MS-related mobility issues. And in fact, even though I am very aware that everyone who has MS has different symptoms, and even the same person from one day to another or 1 hour to another can have different symptoms. So physical therapy can be helpful for anyone, and there are specific exercises that most people with MS, if not everyone, I personally think everyone should be doing them, because I have found that MS tends to target specific muscles when it comes to weakness. So if you're not feeling super weak right now, but you have moments where you do, if you start doing these strengthening exercises right now, then you can build up that strength. Whereas if you're not doing those exercises specific to the muscle groups that you're feeling that weakness, then you're not going to get any stronger. So if you learn what those exercises are and you can do them, they can somewhat be preventative, but also improve your current strength. How often would you go to physical therapy? It's different for everyone. When you're starting a course of physical therapy, if there is an issue, even if it's irregular, like strength or pain, balance, walking, I typically suggest 2 or 3 times a week just so you can learn it. Make sure you're doing it correctly. That's the most important thing. And what you would ask for from your physical therapist, first and foremost, tell them what you think your issues are and how it's limiting you in your day-to-day life. For me, that's the most important thing, because if you just tell me I have some weakness in my legs, as an MS specialist, I'm going to probe. I'm going to ask you more and more questions to figure out what muscle. Is it your hamstring? Is it your quad? Is it your ankle? Is it your calves? Where is it? And then I'm going to say, what does that mean for you throughout your day? Does it mean you have a hard time getting into your car, hard time getting into the shower or your bed, hard time walking, difficulty standing up from the ground, difficulty climbing stairs? What does that weakness mean for you? And that's what we're going to work on. It has to be functional. It has to be those activities that you're working on. Okay, I think I answered that question. I'm going to read it one more time to make sure I covered all of it. I have MS. I have pain and weakness in my limbs, but the appearance is irregular. Would I benefit from physical therapy? Yes, just learn the exercises so that you can improve that strength even though it is irregular, and strategies to reduce the pain. How often? If you're first starting out, maybe 2 to 3 times a week, maybe once a week. If you have trouble getting to PT, I would never want stress causing you to get more symptoms. So talking to the physical therapist that you go with or that you're working with would be best to figure out how often would be best for you. What would I ask my physical therapist for? We covered that. Is PT mainly for those with more severe MS-related mobility issues? No. And just to cover one thing on that last thing as well, I can't tell you how many times I've had people come into the clinic for an initial evaluation with me, and I'll say, okay, what goals are you working towards? How can I help you? And they will say, I'm actually doing fine. I'm only here because my neurologist told me to be. I'm like, great, let's just take these measurements. But I still give them the exercises that I give most of my clients, and the number of times that they'll say, wow, I don't have trouble walking or stair climbing, but this exercise is kind of challenging. I really feel it. I was not expecting it to be that challenging. That's the power of going to physical therapy. You can find out what those exercises are and get a head start. You might not even know that some of these muscles are weaker than what you thought. So just getting ahead of those. Okay, those are all of the questions that I have from here. Let me scroll up. I don't know what the quickest way to do this. I'm just going to go at the very top. Okay. Scrolling. I know we've got a couple in here. One person says, hi, I've had MS since 2018. When I got my attack, my left hand didn't get better. I always have weird feelings. What can I do? So for sensation, there is something that you can do called desensitization exercises. Go ahead and Google that and see what you can come up with. It's basically things like using things that you have around your home, AirPods, a wool coaster, I think that's wool, and a pen, and you can literally touch the part of your body that's having sensory issues. And if this nice smooth thing doesn't feel weird at all, then move on to something else. Maybe it's this, maybe it's this. You're looking for different textures. So for some people with numbness, tingling, burning, pins and needles, if you use something soft, it might feel fine, but something cold or hot or sharp or dull or something with pressure on it might exacerbate it. And so you want to do that. And for some people, it'll feel better within the session. This might increase my numbness right away. But if I do it for 5 or 10 minutes, the numbness actually seems to get better. It's desensitizing. So that's something that you can do for that. I'm just explaining it very quickly. There's more to that, but they're called desensitization exercises. All right. Unfortunately, we don't have this specialty in my country. That is, unfortunately, there are not many MS specialists that are physical therapists. Scrolling. Hey, Dr. Gretchen. Hello. Thanks for joining, everyone. All right, question. Can compression socks level 1 or 2 help with sore and swollen ankles and feet due to MS strain? I am in healthcare and my job requires me to stand on an average for 10 hours a day. Okay, and I should just preface this by saying I can't answer anyone specifically. None of what I'm saying is a treatment, diagnosis, rehab, anything like that for one particular person. This is more generalized. So in general, I would say for people who have jobs on their feet, MS or not, compression socks are a good idea. It keeps the blood flowing, it keeps everything moving so that it's just not pooling, and then you're more likely to get tight and stiff and swollen. So level 1 and 2, I would say, and best case scenario, try it out. Try it for a week or even 2 weeks and see for yourself, is it helpful? If it is, awesome. If it isn't, then I would say don't bother, especially if they annoy you in any way. But I do think compression socks can help with swollen ankles and feet, especially if you, and even just moving your, anytime you can sit, lunch break, bathroom break, move your ankles around, kick your, can't see my legs right now, but kick your legs around, try to move your legs just to get that blood flowing and back up towards your heart, not pulling down towards your ankles. Oh, my feet hurt the most in the mornings and would last for at least an hour. What is your take on medical marijuana for MS? Cheers from Colorado. Hey. Medical marijuana, there is not much research specifically for medical marijuana and multiple sclerosis, so my opinion comes from the clients that I've worked with who have used medical marijuana, and it's different for everyone. I have had some clients say that it was really helpful and it significantly helped reduce their spasticity and their tightness and their pain. And then I've had other clients who use medical marijuana and it didn't help at all. So, and I've also had people use medical marijuana in different forms, and one form helps but another form doesn't. So I'm not prescribing this or saying it's a good or bad idea. It's different for everyone. I have heard both. And unfortunately, there is not much research yet, at least, specifically for people with multiple sclerosis. So that's my best answer. I have a Peloton. That is awesome. And spin at least 5 days a week. Is that enough? So, Shelly, my question for you is, it depends. What are you trying to work on? If your issue, I don't know when you asked that question, like if it was at a specific time that I was talking about something, but if your main goal is endurance, Peloton, I haven't done the Peloton, but I've been to spin classes and they are intense. So if your main goal is cardio and endurance, then yeah, that sounds like enough to me. But if your goal is to walk better or improve your balance, then the Peloton won't be helpful for those things. So depends what your goals are. Someone calls Shelly a show off. That's funny. She says she's kidding though. I've had MS for 2.5 years. What are good balance exercises? I love balance exercises. Again, I cannot prescribe specific exercises to each individual person, which is why I created my online program, The Missing Link, where I share all of them because they're pre-recorded. But if, let's say you were to come to me right now, we're in a physical therapy clinic during your initial evaluation, and you say, I have balance issues, I would ask you, when? Is it when you're walking? And specifically, if you were to say, yes, it's when I'm walking, when is it when you're walking? Is it when you're on one leg and the other leg is advancing through? Is it when both feet are on the ground in a staggered position? I would then test your balance. The positions that I test balance in the physical therapy clinic are your feet apart. I would just tell you, stand normally. How long can you hold that for? Stand with your feet together. How long can you hold that for? Stand with your feet staggered, 1 foot forward, 1 foot back. Switch. And then same thing, but tandem, right in front, and then single leg one side, single leg the other side. I look at those for every single person, and if any of them are off, most likely you're having issues with balance when walking. And then do that as an exercise. Practice that balance, make sure you're holding on to something for safety. Someone else says, hello. How do I build up muscle in my legs to not get so fatigued when walking longer distances? Great question. I have 2 answers. So how do I build up muscles in my legs to not get so fatigued? So first and foremost, when you're doing leg strengthening exercises, don't push to the point of fatigue. If you're doing leg exercises and every time you're getting tired and you're like, I only made it 15 minutes today, I'm so tired, I can't do anymore. You are training your brain to associate leg exercises with fatigue. I have a whole YouTube video on this. If you haven't watched it, my YouTube handle is Dr. Gretchen Hawley. But if you do that every time, you're training your brain. Leg exercises mean fatigue. So stop before you get fatigued, but slowly increase the intervals. So I'm just throwing out numbers here. If you can do leg exercises for 15 minutes and then you're done, just wiped out, I would say maybe back off to 10 minutes and do that for maybe a week or two, and then 11 minutes, and then 12 minutes, and 12 and a half minutes, then 13 minutes. It takes a while. This could take a month or multiple months, but start at a time or a number of exercises. If you can do 5 and then you're done, start with just 3, and then build to a 4th exercise, but don't do as many repetitions or sets. So you're working your way up slowly but surely. And that's for 2 reasons. 1, so your brain doesn't associate these exercises with fatigue, and 2, so that you can actually build up your strength. Also, you could try doing different leg exercises that are not as challenging, perhaps. It's hard to say because I don't know what you're doing, but change up the exercises. If you're doing the same routine for years, that's not good. You need to change it up every now and then. So I hope that's helpful. Can exercise and PT ever lead to elimination of MS symptoms or temporary relief? At this point, I will say it will not. Well, it depends what you mean. I have had people build up strength, like for foot drop, for example, where they'll do some of these exercises and they build up enough strength where their foot drop doesn't bother them anymore. I don't know if that's to say that 15 years from now, if they stop doing the exercise, that weakness will come back. I imagine it would. So in that case, I guess it would be temporary. Why can't I say that word today? Temporary relief. Elimination of MS symptoms. I guess that's a tough question based on what you mean by elimination. It doesn't cure multiple sclerosis. It doesn't help with remyelination. It helps with finding new pathways. So the reason that people are able to improve strength with MS is for one of 2 reasons. 1, that repetition of over and over and over again practicing an exercise can either strengthen the neural connection from your brain to that muscle, and so that connection's getting stronger, or if that connection's just not working, it's not getting all the way from point A to point B, your brain will find a new connection. So that's why MS-specific physical therapy exercises help. When I work out, my symptoms tend to get a bit worse temporarily, and that always scares me, so I avoid exercising. Any advice? Absolutely. I don't know if you were on the call when I was talking about this. And by the way, when people tell me their symptoms, I often smile, and it's only because I have something that can help you. And it's so common, and I don't want you to feel like you're alone. It's never because I think your symptom is funny or anything like that, but I just get so excited that I can help. So to this question, yes. So when I exercise, my symptoms tend to get a bit worse temporarily. What I am assuming is that it's because your core temperature is rising. Heat intolerance is when your core temperature rises by at least half of a degree, which is so little. And exercise increases our core temperature for everyone, whether you have MS or not. So my best suggestion to you would be to keep your core temperature down, take longer rest breaks, maybe do some easier exercises every now and then. Thank you. You've answered my question and more. That's great. I'm glad. Scroll. Thank you for this most helpful dialogue. You are aces. Thank you. Thank you. That was very helpful. What I forgot to ask, why can I spin for 45 minutes, but I can only walk? Oh, I love this question. Why can I spin for 45 minutes, but I can only walk for 12 to 15 minutes? Thank you for asking this. Because it's completely different movements. That's my best answer. What a lot of people don't understand, specifically in my experience, orthopedic physical therapists, if you have a goal of walking better or walking longer distances, why are you practicing biking? Not you specifically, I'm just saying in general. Biking will help with biking. Spinning will help with spinning. Walking will help with walking. So what you need to know is that people with MS, brains and neurons, spinal cord, everything, it doesn't have the same carryover as someone who doesn't have MS. So I don't have multiple sclerosis. For me, I could hop on a bike and put some resistance on and go, that's going to increase my hip flexor strength as well as others, but it's going to increase my hip flexor strength. For me, that would mean that my walking might be a little bit better, my strength in a standing position would be better, but for someone who has MS, there isn't that carryover. You might be able to go for 5 hours on a bike spinning against resistance, but you're sitting upright, but that's not the same position as walking, and you have resistance against that. I'm assuming you don't have resistance when you're walking, so it's a completely different movement. So if your goal is to improve the number of minutes that you can walk, you need to practice walking for a number of minutes, and you use that same theory that I mentioned before for how to build up endurance for exercises without getting fatigued. I hope that makes sense, because it's extremely important. I can't tell you how many times people with MS will come into the clinic and they'll say, Dr. Gretchen, I've been to PT before and it didn't work, so I don't think this is going to help. I'm just here because my doctor told me to be. And the first thing I'll say is, well, what did you do in physical therapy? Well, I'd hop on the bike for about 30 minutes. I was really good at the bike, and then we'd do some exercises. 30 minutes on a bike, I bet you're great at biking because you've been practicing that, but it's not the same. It won't help with walking. All right, moving on. Elimination of symptoms. Good for you. Hashtag can't relate. For me personally, I have pain in my legs. Will pain ever subside after repeated exercise? So this is something that's different for everyone. Sometimes pain when you're exercising is also because of your core temperature rising. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes the exercise is too hard. Even if you'll stumbling over my words now. Even if it feels easy to you in the moment, if you're getting pain, that's often a sign that for your muscles, it's too hard. I often will, at least in my mind, I kind of separate the brain from the muscles. Obviously, it's all related, but your brain might think, this is so easy. Why am I getting pain? But your muscles are like, oh my God, this is so hard. So change the exercise. Maybe make it a little bit easier. Cheat a little bit to make it easier. But will pain ever subside after repeated exercise? Sometimes just over, as long as it's not heavy and it's just light movement for the exercise. Sometimes for some people, if they do 20 repetitions versus 5, it gets more fluid and it feels a little bit better. Pain can lessen. Thank you, this helped. So this temporary worsening of the symptom is normal. Absolutely normal. You are not alone. My bladder has hijacked my life. Any ideas? So shameless plug, tomorrow, Saturday, the Missing Link is having our monthly guest speaker, and it's a pelvic floor physical therapist. She's going to be talking to us all about bladder and incontinence and pelvic floor, pelvic health exercises. So unfortunately, I am not the person. I am aware that incontinence and bladder and bowel, it's a very common issue in MS. I am not the best person to give you advice on that. Our guest speaker tomorrow would be, though. So if you can find a pelvic floor physical therapist, that's someone who you can reach out to. I'm sorry I can't be of more help for that. Do you have any suggestions for apps that can help with improving cognitive function? Great question. I don't off the top of my head, but I do in my notes somewhere. So I will try to create a post on that. Let me just jot that down so I don't forget. Apps for cognition. Great, because I know that they do exist. And I have them written down somewhere, but I don't have them right now. Check back later for a post. That's awesome. What time is that tomorrow? Yeah, so for those of you who are members of the Missing Link, it is tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can join us live to not only be on live for the presentation, but if you have specific questions, you can ask our pelvic floor physical therapist those questions. And if you don't feel comfortable asking, then you can email them to me and I will ask on your behalf. So if you're a Missing Link member, it's 11 a.m. tomorrow, Saturday, April 4th, with Dr. Caitlin Erisman. Okay, I think those are all the questions. Thank you so much for joining. If you guys liked this, comment below, let me know. I can do this more. This was my first time trying it out. I thought it would be the best way to help more than one person at a time with answering questions. And just as a reminder, nothing that I say on here is diagnosing, treating, giving you specific advice for your symptoms. It's all just general guidance from my experience of working with people who have MS. I get a lot of lower back pain. What are some exercises or stretches? So for anyone dealing with lower back pain, I specifically created the Total Core program for that. Low back pain, in my experience, 9 times out of 10 is due to a weakness in the core. So there's tons of exercises in there for that. Am I missing something? Thank you so much. Stay safe. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to call it there. Thank you guys so much for joining. I hope to talk to you guys soon. Love this. Thanks for Community Feel. You're very welcome. Bye, guys.